Olafin de Lawrence. Straight through for Fuller. Fuller's beaten Larson here. And Ricardo Fuller scored for Stoke. 10 minutes to go. And it could yet be a celebratory night in the Potteries.
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 2 of the Wizards of Drivel podcast. Who'd have thought we'd get this far, eh? I'm joined by, as always, Chris Brammer.
Hello.
And Jason Martin.
Hi there.
Okay, we're back sooner than expected. We're back on a Wednesday night. We're choosing to ignore the Europa League final that's happening as we record. First off, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who downloaded the first episode. We have absolutely taken your comments, your praise, and some of your criticism on board. We're addressing, the issues that you raised up by tweeting us and saying this sounds terrible. But we're pressing on. And let's start with a Stoke Titty win. Chris Brammer, Stoke have won a football match.
I know.
How about that then?
I didn't see it coming, as anyone who listened to the last show will remember from my prediction. And let's be honest, after the first half, I don't think anyone else saw it coming either, because it was by far one of the worst halves of football that we've played in a while. In fact, I would say that the game itself summed up Stoke City's season in 90 minutes. The first half, it was as bad as it could be. We had nothing going for us. We looked lacklustre. We were slow on the ball. We were losing out in midfield to West Ham. The defence looked lost. It was the worst thing ever. Gianelli and Bula was getting his lovely stick on Twitter. People telling him that he's the worst defensive midfielder that they've ever seen, even though he's not a defensive midfielder. And then, that second half came along, and I didn't expect it. I was texting my dad at the time, actually, saying, oh my God, this is an awful end to the season. And then, they seemed to come out with a different, a different attitude completely. I think Mbula was a big driving factor in it. I don't know what was said to him at half-time, but suddenly he seemed to be getting everything right. He was driving the game forward. It was a great goal by him to get us back into it, and it made the second half a much more of an even contest than the first half. Shawcross, I thought, was absolutely fantastic. Back to one of his best performances. I even think Charlie Adam came on and made a really good impact, of course, setting up the corner goal. Yes, we scored from a corner, and of course, everyone's favourite, Mama Biram Geoff, scoring, and them celebrations were absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I didn't see it coming. What about you guys?
Chris, you have the sound of someone is not used to Stoke City winning.
Well, to be fair, we haven't won since, March, so I didn't see it coming.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Jason.
Yeah, I fully saw it coming. I said it last week. When the team came out, I was quite happy. There were changes made. Oh yeah, I'm back in, obviously. So finally getting his chance to show how good he is after 6 weeks on the side. I was unsure about Cameron at the back, which he sort of proved by having one of the worst games I've ever seen. I think Bardsley was very unlucky to be dropped there. And the defence in general was a real game of two halves. Much better in the second. And two players stood out in that, which would be obviously Shawcross and Eric Peters. I thought Wolfshide, as much as I love the man, had a terrible first half. Picked up a lot better. I think it was Shawcross's run in the second half, the Wizard of Drivel himself, tearing down the wing, which fully lifted the crowd and helped us in that approach for the equaliser. Mbula, as mentioned, was terrific. He didn't look too bad in the first half. He looked like he was trying really hard, on the defensive side, which got him booked in the end, which is unfortunate. But in the second half, I guess the sleeves were off, let alone the gloves. He came out without his long sleeve shirt, back to his short sleeved glove attire, and that was it. Yeah, the gloves never come off. God help us if they ever do. Yeah, he was a ruthless machine in the second half. You can see, we mentioned in the last week's podcast, his ability to complete take-ons, and he was just running through them like a man possessed. Like, you wonder if Mark Hughes like threatened to take his Twitter account away at half time. But yeah, he was a real driving force. Obviously, there were 2 terrific subs, which is a huge save for the last game of the season. Geoff, who I've been screaming to come on for months, finally did. And to his credit, Adam on for Bojan did make sense, even though I thought Bojan was having a very solid game. Then obviously the goal came, which, imagine having an aerial striker up front that isn't 6'5" or 6'4". I've been screaming for ages that Geoff's been our best aerial forward, bearing in mind that he scored 4-headed goals this season, and then he made it 5 with a leap that was quite incredible. Like, I was desperately trying to find where the salmon was in his family tree. And yeah, it was just a perfect end to the season, really. Like, all things considered, a late goal wiped away all the negativity. A Geoff goal had me screaming my house down, and yeah, I was generally quite happy with it.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I think friend of the show, Jamie Chatfield, writer for 423 Stoke, wanted us to sort of mention the sort of atmosphere at half time, because I don't know if you guys were there or if you were being Plastic fans or whatever, but at half time there was a real sort of sense of, there was a huge sense of negativity. I know that there's kind of been that sort of underlying throughout our games recently, but particularly at half time in this game, I thought, wow, the crowd is really, really on the team's backs here. And it wasn't totally unjustified, because we were so poor in that first half. I mean, there was just no link-up play whatsoever in the passing. Mbula, I think, was having a really poor game. Bojan wasn't getting a kick, really. Do you think that negativity sort of maybe urged the players on? Do you think it had any effect whatsoever? And do you think it was justified?
I think yes and no. Obviously, we had in the news today, we had like Walshide was on Signal Radio apparently bemoaning the boos towards the end of the first half, and Walshide got some stick back for that. And I think that booing, I know people go in and pay their money to watch football, and they are entitled to act how they want within reason. But I don't see how booing helps. I think the frustration, you could tell, was boiling over. Like, it was quite a poisonous atmosphere in the half time. Whether it was a shock, like we've been playing bad recently, whether it was like a building up of that frustration and come on, it's the last day, like we're not going to have this for 3 months, give us something, show that you care. And I think it spurned key players on. Obviously Shawcross being the main one seemed to really react to that in the second half and drag the team forward, and I think that players responded as a result.
I think that run down the wing, I think several people have cited it as like the kind of a turning point in the game. Oh, right, it wasn't like he'd run down the wing and crossed it into a guy who'd scored a goal or whatever, but just the sight of Brian Shawcross, bombing on, battling for that ball. I think a lot of people saw it as a point in the game where, like, okay, right, we're trying to win this now. We're seriously going to try and put in a performance for you. And I thought Mbula, despite looking a bit wayward first half, really stepped up in the second half. Of course, he scored the goal, but there was a couple of surging runs he made. And I don't know if you play Super Mario Brothers, but when you get that yellow star, and then then Mario can just run through anything and just knock everything away. It was kind of a bit like that.
It was magical. How on earth he didn't get sent off, though, I don't know. Like, diving in the crowd on a yellow was risky, to say the least.
Yeah, that's
why the refs ignored it.
Yeah, and also Geoff's winner, he not take his shirt off, which is a bookable offence, and then run into the crowd, which is a bookable offence. I mean, I think the ref wouldn't have wanted to send him off, having just scored a goal and then paid tribute to his mother. I think the ref would have come in for some criticism had he done that.
Yeah, he even looked apologetic on the yellow. But yeah, interesting to see what Chris thinks about Mbula.
I don't really know what to say. No, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, watching him in that last game, there was moments where it was pure and Stephen and Zonzi that I saw. It was that same. If you remember the 6-1 at the end of last season against Liverpool, where Nzonzi was so instrumental in that midfield. I'm not saying Mbula was like the same level or whatever, but there were certainly moments where you were like, oh, this is exactly what our team has needed for the last God knows how many months. And again, it to bring us back to the first podcast, I cannot wait until he's familiar with the language, he's familiar with the team, and he really is that character in midfield who drives this team on.
Yeah, definitely a much more positive performance and a sort of more. It's a great way to end the season. It's a really solid note on which to end the season, even though we've been in a really bad run of form. I think just getting the result was the kind of important thing here. The final thing I want to sort of discuss on this West Ham game, I think I sent you this in our Facebook chat that we have, research for the show and all that, is I think it's the Daily Mirror player ratings for this game, which I think they appeal to a certain kind of football fan, to be honest. This is the write-up for John Walter's performance in this game. A terrific engine, always an outlet, and never stops grafting. 8. Bojan Kirkic, invisible and eventually taken out of his misery, far too lightweight. 5. Marko Arnautovic, more concerned with his hairstyle than trying to unruffle markers. 5.
I think with Walters, James Whittaker on Twitter summed it up well when he said that John Walters offside may as well be a double barrel name. He was absolutely. I can't believe it. I counted a good 4 or 5 in that match, and it's every game, and you wonder how on earth.
I don't think he's fully fit. I think he's had an injury recently. Well, he's a Stoke player, of course. He's had an injury recently, but he's kind of been rushed back a bit. Maybe he's got his eye on the Euros. He wants to impress the Republic of Ireland management team before that tournament. And clearly he's always going to put a shift in for you. That's sort of a given with John Walters anyway. So I don't think him never stopping grafting, in words of this report, is like worthy of an 8. I think for John Walters that's worthy of a 5. And then what else have you done, mate? This write-up also gives a 6 to a Geoff Whelan, who apparently was playing on Sunday.
Brilliant.
I think these write-ups have sort of underlined how much of a waste of time player ratings and newspapers are, to be honest. Because I don't know about you, whenever I see them, having seen a Stoke game, I just think, what game were these guys watching? How can John Walters be an 8 and Arnautovic be a 5 when they pretty much had the same game? To be honest, I don't think either of them were spectacular.
If this is Arnautovic's farewell, I think he's, in terms of the last game, I think he's gone out on a bit of a whimper, but it's okay. He's not going to be the main man every game. I think in terms of his score, I think the hairstyle stuff is just a bit terrible.
It's a cheap shot, isn't it?
It is.
Foreign player doesn't, set the world on fire. Oh, he's got a funny haircut. Let's take the rip out of that.
Indeed. I think Bojan, again, very harsh, would have put him at a 7. Hosselu at a 5, I think, has probably been kind. I completely forgot he was on the pitch for parts, and obviously I'm a big advocate of Hosselu, but I just didn't know where he fit in that game, and that sort of worries me ahead of next season.
Right. Final thing on that game. Thoughts on the new kit? Did it look all right to you?
I loved them. I thought they looked gorgeous. Which is weird because I was a bit unsure about them when I'd seen the pictures online. But no, I think they're great, if honest.
Yeah, I agree.
Now
there is one more thing to mention about the game, David, and that's that somehow we amazingly finished the season in 9th.
Yes. Thank you to Danny Drinkwater, by the way. What a goal that was. Yeah. I wasn't expecting us to finish 9th, but it's like a cosy jumper, isn't it? No matter how bad a season we have, no matter what run of form we're in, we can just sit back, have a cup of tea. We're 9th. That'll do us fine.
I find it hilarious that after months and months of being absolutely atrocious and we've not been strong enough, we've fallen apart. Somehow we still managed to sneak into the top half of the table and finish in the same place. And I mean, obviously it doesn't solve any of the issues that we've got, and we certainly shouldn't rest on our laurels in the summer. But yeah, it's definitely given us a good feeling at the end of the season, and now there's that incredible stat that each season under Hughes we finished 9th. That's amazing.
Right.
What was more upsetting about that is that following 3 successive 9ths, which was the big story, that in our Sky Sports season review we were, what you're going to get from Mark Hughes apparently, which is finishes of 10th and 11th. We're like, come on.
Right. Speaking of good feelings towards the end of the season, that wasn't the only match at the Britannia Stadium since we've been away. There was Andy Wilkinson's testimonial, and Chris Brammer, you were there. Were you on the pitch?
Well, I wasn't on the pitch, simply because by the time by the time I was down, and I wanted to go on the pitch, the stewards had got their way, and they didn't want anyone else to have fun. So, which is a shame. I got a picture of it though. That's a memento, isn't it? But yeah, it was a really, really good time. We got down there about half an hour or so before kick-off, and we got into the ground and saw everyone warming up. As I'm sure most people who are listening are aware, there was 2 Stoke teams, one in a home strip that was managed by Andy Wilkinson, another managed in the away kit, managed by Mark Hughes. Pre-match, there was a lot of pitch-side activity. They were interviewing all the old players. It was particularly funny for Dicko, the stadium announcer guy, saying "Welcome back to your true home, Dicko." That was brilliant. They weren't overly strict in keeping to time, so 7:45 kickoff. They came out at 7:45. There was lots of photos. Yeah, they weren't pressed for time. It weren't like Sky were filming it or anything. Wilko led his team out. His first half team, it had obviously Wilko at right back, Simonson in goal, Abdoulaye Faye, who I'd forgot. He's massive. He's actually massive. Not in terms of overweight. He's a unit, isn't he? And I'd forgotten how weird he jumps at things, at corners. He doesn't he almost throws himself at the ball. He doesn't really lift off the ground. He just flings himself at things, almost like a swan dive. Anyway, so them 2, he had Danny Higginbottom, Dicko, Liam Lawrence, Rory Delap, Dean Whitehead, Richard Cresswell, and then up front he had Sidibe and Fuller. So that was a good team of proper legends. Whilst on Mark Hughes' team, he had the youngster Daniel Bachman in goal, who honestly looked really, really decent in this game. Granted, it was a game against ex-professionals, but I do expect him to probably be on our bench in a few years, after Shay Given's gone. Then we had Carl Hoofkins, Ryan Shotter, and Upson was there, who got a bit of a smatter of an applause when his name was read out. He was clearly not a Stoke legend. Andy Griffin was there, Peter Odemwingie, Carl Henry, who, whenever he had the ball, a small section of the crowd kept booing. I don't know whether that's because...
We've never forgiven you, Carl.
No, exactly.
For going to Wolves, your boyhood club, and then captaining them. How dare you?
Yeah, that's it. We had...
Sorry,
go on.
I don't want to interrupt you mid-flow, but it's just reminded me of my favourite Carl Henry memory, which was... do you remember when Chris Commons left us to go to Nottingham Forest? His first game back as a Nottingham Forest player at the Britannia, of course he was getting absolute pelters from all sections of the ground. And Carl Henry clearly clocked onto this. And he put in one of the most disgusting challenges I've ever seen a Stoke player produce. And, there's been a few. Just Chris Commons goes flying down the wing. Carl Henry says, "Nah, I'm having none of this, mate." Smashes him. Chris Commons goes 10 feet in the air and has to go off I think 5 minutes later. But I think that was the highlight of the game. Just seeing Chris Commons fly up in the air, thanks to Carl Henry. And I'll always thank Carl for that.
Brilliant. Yeah, but, the crowd at the Britannia clearly didn't appreciate him the other night. So the funniest, weirdest thing about the starting Mark Hughes team was that he was actually playing 4 strikers. So he had Lewis Malt, who's is he at Motherwell now? I think he is. James Beattie, Kitson was there, and Peter Crouch was also up front. So explain that lineup. Not that it mattered because
it's a Mark Hughes lineup, isn't it? You don't know what team you're gonna get.
Yeah, but do you know what? To be honest, it's not like it mattered because it wasn't like there was too much of a competitive side to this game. Like it started, and within like the first 5 or 10 minutes, Wilko subbed himself off. Obviously, well, I mean, he's obviously got a medical note, hasn't he? He's been told he can't really play for too long, so he came off and replaced himself with Phil Cafu Bardsley, who was going absolutely crazy in the game. He was just running down the wings.
Now,
he was not.
I've seen the footage of the penalty incident which led to the final penalty.
Yes.
I think that was Bardsley, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was theatrical at best.
Now, I thought it was a stone wall penalty. I thought Bardsley gets absolutely clattered there. So definite penalty. I don't want any people writing in about that penalty. I think that's nailed on penalty. And I think of all the players in that team, I think Wilko was the natural penalty taker in that 11. So
obviously,
it's not any of this talk that we gave Wilko a free penalty in the last minute just so he could have a goal. I'm not buying it, lads.
Nonsense.
I'm not buying it.
And any talk that Carlo Nash went up to him and quite clearly said, "Which way are you going to shoot?" That's all nonsense.
No,
none of it happened.
Wilko, mate. Wilko. It was like watching Andrea Pirlo take a penalty. It was just a masterclass. He gave him the eyes. He did. And a pitch invasion ensued. Yeah. I think. Have you seen the footage of one of the stewards tripping up fans?
I think he's getting signed in summer, isn't he?
Is he on new centre back?
Yeah, they wanted a no-nonsense defender.
Yeah, at least he puts a tackle in, unlike Whelan at times.
I did see on the Oatcake forum that they even managed to complain about the testimonial because there was a person on there, and I don't think they were trolling, but they could have been. But they was saying how disrespectful it was for people to pitch invade when all the legends should have been given the right to come round and do one last lap of honour. And,
but to be fair, we warned them. We said, look, if Wilko scores, we're on the pitch. It's not like we hadn't notified in advance. This was always going to happen. No, and I think everyone on the pitch knew that.
Exactly, and it was the perfect end for the testimonial. Like it could only end one way, and that was with 8,000 or so fans stood round Andy Wilkinson singing songs about hating Vale. That was the only way this game was going to finish.
And I love that Wilko joined in the shoot the Vale scum chant with his best mate Cole Dickinson, the Port Vale captain, probably within earshot.
Yes, it was brilliant.
I think we'll leave the first half there, lads. Join us after the break.
I just don't think you understand. His rock is man, he's better than Zidane. We've got Phil Shard. We've got Shard. I just don't think you understand. His rock is man, he's better than Zidane. We've got Phil Shard.
Hello, welcome back to the second half of the Wizards of Drivel podcast. We've had some chat on West Ham, we've had some chat on Wilko's testimonial. So now we're just going to delve into, the bits and bobs, stuff that we've noticed on the internet, stuff you sent in to us. Something that caught my eye on the Daily Telegraph website recently was that Stoke have been last on Match of the Day more times than any other team this season. Jason, are we just a really dreadful side to watch?
Obviously, I think it's all been orchestrated by Lineker and his cronies at the FA, hasn't it? No, in all seriousness, I think it sort of points to what a few people have been saying this season, that it hasn't been perhaps as entertaining from our perspective as maybe the last two seasons. We've had some really good results in here in which we've notably been in the top sort of first showings on Match of the Day. So you look at your Man City wins, your Man United wins, things like that. But apart from that, yeah, we've been near the bottom, but what do you really expect from us? Like, two neutrals, we are now the average mid-table side in the Premier League. We sort of exist more than anything. We are maybe what the likes of Fulham were a few years ago. We're probably in the same bracket as sort of Palace and Swansea. We're just almost making up the numbers around the stories at the top and bottom of the table. Now, until one of us does, say, what West Ham are doing or Leicester, and start a run of form where we're considered interesting, we're not going to get up there. But that's like the stature of the club. In terms of the performances, I do agree that we've not been as good this season. We've not been as entertaining. There's been a couple of good games where we've performed, we've scored and everything else, but by and large, no, we've not really deserved much higher up, so I'm not too fussed by it.
Okay, and another bit of news that came sort of in the wake of Andy Wilkinson's testimonial is that genuinely bona fide Stoke City legend Ricardo Fuller has sort of finally announced his retirement. He'd been sort of without a club for a while, but now he's officially hung up his boots. Kind of fitting that his last sort of outing as a footballer came, at the Britannia in front of Stoke fans who all adore him and stuff. I think we did ask on Twitter for people's favourite Ricardo Fuller moments, and I think sort of the same kind of goals kept coming back to us. But Jason, what sort of moment stands out for you?
Okay, so to begin with, if you've not watched the Fuller Week feature on Stoke City's YouTube channel, like, drop everything and go watch it now. Like, they're long interviews, there's his goals, all the goals in his Stoke shirt, and it's an absolute joy to watch. Like, you'll watch him again and again and you'll just reminisce. It's absolutely terrific. And in terms of Fuller's best moments for me, I mean, a lot of people talk about that goal against Villa, for example, when we just came up. But the best goal I've seen him score was against Birmingham, the Britannia, where he picked up at the halfway line. He ran to the edge of the D, cut inside one, cut inside two, and then hammered it in the far corner. And that was just incredible to watch. Where anyone else at a bigger club, it would still be on Premier League years for eons to come.
I can still picture that photo in my mind, because I remember we've got the poppies on our shirts. It was around that time of year where we have the poppies on our shirts, and there's a shot of Ricardo Fuller, like, Jermaine Pennant is stood behind him just grinning away, and Fuller's just taking the adoration of the fans like, yeah, that's what I do.
He is. It was,
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming, guys.
It is absolutely terrific. And when you watch the goals back, like, you'll love to, like, reappreciate his goals from the lap headers. Like, oh my god, like, the headers that he could get, the power he could get behind it. Like, we've seen a terrific one this weekend with Geoff, but you watch Fuller's and they're absolutely fantastic. So yeah, just go watch that series.
And we've had I did ask on Twitter, obviously what your favourite Fuller moments are, and obviously the goal against West Ham came up, the goal against Wolves came up, the goal you just mentioned against Villa came up. I also asked people, have you ever met Ricardo Fuller? And friend of the show, Elliot Hackney from the Bear Pit TV, our overlords at the Bear Pit TV, I just asked out, have you ever met Ricardo Fuller and how cool was he? Elliot says he sees Ricardo Fuller literally every Saturday night in Touch in Hanley. I know, I pressed him for more details, obviously, and he says he sees Ricardo, Liam Lawrence, Dicko, Abdullah Faye and Wilko in the VIP corner, and Ricardo bought him a drink once. To which I say to Elliot, why are you letting Ricardo Fuller buy you drinks, mate? You should be buying Ricardo Fuller drinks. Sorry, Elliot. Big fan of your work, but you've got to be buying Ricardo Fuller drinks whenever you see him. I think that should just be a law among Stoke fans. If you see Ricardo Fuller out, you buy him a drink. And I know he's a footballer. I know he's got a lot of money, but he's Ricardo Fuller. You see him in Touch in Hanley, you're getting the Jaeger vomiting.
Does the same count for Mamadi Sidibe? If you see him, you have to buy a pastry.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you have to buy two. I think customers in Sidibe's patisserie in Hanley need to buy more if you're a Stoke fan than if you're just a regular punter out for a decent cake. Shall we move on to some correspondence? Now, we asked if our Twitter followers had just any questions they wanted us to talk about. Kyle Norbury at _football_nerd on Twitter says, what is Mark Hughes' fascination with the number 9? Chris?
What does he mean? I don't understand.
Well, I was hoping you'd know, to be honest.
His fascination with the number 9?
Yeah, apparently Mark Hughes has got a fascination with the number 9.
Okay.
Any clue as to what he could be talking about?
Kyle, you're going to have to send me a message. I'll try and do some research before the next podcast, and I'll try and have an answer as to why that is something that if that is indeed something that does exist.
A more straightforward here question then. At 10 in the hole, Sam Cox has asked us, would you take a gamble on Troy Deeney?
It's a difficult one. Obviously, he's like a club hero at Watford at the moment. Has proved in the past that he can play the lone striker role, but he sort of flourished in a 4-4-2 alongside Odion Igalo this season. I think he's one of those that you can respect that he does a really good job without wanting to sign him for your club necessarily. But I don't think he's what we need. I don't think he's too much of a difference to what we have at the moment in the likes of maybe Hostler and Walters, for example. And I think there's more pressing issues in the side that we could get sorted first, particularly up front. I think some more pace would probably be needed before we get another loan sort of all-round forward in.
Okay, I'm going to sort of quick-fire ask these questions then. So, Chris and Jason, you've got to sort of say the first thing that comes to mind. You know, let's answer them quickly. No matter how sort of strange you think the question is, you've got to sort of be on the ball here.
Let Chris go first for each answer.
Yeah. Chris, Zach at Nola Stokey asks, who could potentially replace Arnie?
Oh, that is a good question. Realistically, or like non-realistically?
Well, interpret the question in any way.
Okay, Zlatan.
Okay, brilliant. Now, Jason at Enter Shaqiri asks, could Geoff, given a proper run in the side, solve some of our goal-scoring problems next season?
Check my Twitter feed and you'll find the answer. I've been screaming it for a good 3 years.
Back to you, Chris.
Go on.
Matt Selfridge asks, how do magnets work?
Oh, man, no one knows. It's a miracle. Who knows how magnets work?
Okay, now back to you, Jason. At SCFC Josh 96 asks, who would win in a fight, 1 trillion lions or the sun?
Ooh, I think the lions would win, but the sun would lie and say they won.
Oh, very good. Yeah, seriously, people don't buy the sun. Chris, Mr. Tommy Williams asks, if Tex moves on, who do we replace him with?
Oh, God, I mean, how can you replace him? He's such a crucial figure in our locker room. I feel that the only person who's able to replace him would be Gerard Piqué.
Gerard Piqué. Yes, I think Gerard Piqué would definitely be useful in those moments when we're 3-1 up away at Bournemouth and we just need to see out the last 6 minutes. Okay. Finally, for Jason, at BAJ Cartwright asks, haven't been able to listen due to exams on horizon, but potential question, should we have expected more from Shaq this season?
Yes. I think
yes.
people would.
Yeah, that's it. I think Chris has answered that for you. And there's one final question from my mate Alex on Twitter, who asks, in 2 years' time, who will finish higher? Mark Hughes' Stoke or Benitez's Newcastle? And I'll leave that open for you to discuss.
Be quite the battle for the championship.
I'm not convinced Benitez will be at Newcastle, so...
Yeah, there are a lot of caveats to this question, and also I don't think this question really involves, what Stoke are going to do, because Stoke are going to finish 9th for the next 2 seasons.
Exactly.
So this question presumes A, that Benitez will stay at Newcastle, B, they'll get promoted next season, and C, they'll finish 8th or above next season. So I think we can be pretty confident in saying Hughes is Stoke on this one. Yeah, we're all agreed. Now, that has been a fairly messy correspondence section. A lot of quite bizarre questions being asked there. I love the trillion lines or the sun one. Finally, before we go, we've got to mention that 4231 Stoke. Jason, you're the sort of don of 4231 Stoke. What's been going on the website recently?
Okay, so in terms of things that have gone up recently, we've had Jamie Chatfield's very emotionally charged match review of the weekend's performance. Don't read with your kids. It's got a lot of bad words in it. We're pursuing our best 11 draft, where 10 or 11 of us picked our best 11 Stoke side from a pool of all the Stoke City players that have ever played for the club. I believe that we're on rounds 7 and 8, around about there. And that will come to a conclusion later this week, hopefully. You can see all the articles on our website, and we've got some lovely Football Manager and Championship Manager features where both Sam and David are working through as Stoke with varying degrees of success.
Yeah, I think varying degrees of success is a nice way to put that. I'm really, really struggling at the moment on Championship Manager. I think I could be facing the sack soon. But, you know, if you want to imagine a future in which Stoke are even worse in 2003 than they actually were, you know, go and read that article. Think how bad it could have been.
No, we've got some nice transfer review pieces coming up over the next couple of weeks, including a grading piece on how we feel our new signings have done over the course of the season on a sort of school-based A to F grade. And there's going to be some nice transfer pieces given the recent links to players.
Okay, fantastic. I want to say thank you on behalf of all three of us and on behalf of the 4231 Stoke team. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of the Wizards of Drivel. I know the sound quality wasn't great. I think that's something we're definitely trying to improve, you know, as we release each one. And we also had feedback on the theme tune saying, bit too long, lads, so hopefully we've addressed that this time. But we've got over 250 listens on it on SoundCloud, which is really quite humbling. And everyone who's tweeted us saying they really enjoyed it, thank you so much for that. It means a great deal. And it's also on iTunes now, which is really good. It took a bit of hassle to get it on there, but it's finally on there. So you can download it and get it straight to your phone whenever we release this. If you want to get involved, if you want to send us any questions for discussion, if you've got any ideas for features for the show, any ideas for something you'd like us to talk about on the show, if you want to be on the show yourself, if you fancy chatting to us, fancy contributing your opinions, you can do that by tweeting us at 4231. That's in numbers, 4231 Stoke on Twitter. You can email 4231stoke. That's in all letters at gmail.com. And you can also submit articles to the website as well. Finally, individually, we're all on Twitter. I'm at David Cowlishaw. Chris, what is your name on Twitter?
It's at Bramad.
And
at
Jason?
SCFC Jace.
Okay, and I think that's been it. As I hear that Sevilla are currently 3-1 up against Liverpool, that's a very, very happy way to end the show. Thank you very much for listening. We'll hopefully be back around June, so stay tuned for the latest from the Wizards of the Drivel. Goodbye.